Hello and welcome to the second episode of Blair West's High Growth Leadership podcast. We are honoured and privileged today to have Rachel Jones as our guest. So Rachel is a four-time business founder. The latest of those businesses is a business called SnapDragon, which is a VC-backed tech platform that helps to fight online counterfeits.
Our conversation with Rachel, who is a successful early-stage female founder, covers aspects such as the landscape for sole female founders, raising institutional finance, succession planning and hiring first external CEO, and also the sort of challenges and opportunities that relate to scaling a purpose-led business.
And it is just a wonderful story of a really inspirational leader starting a business out of an idea and following through on that. So we hope you enjoyed it as much as we do. Big Blair West welcome to Rachel Jones, who we're absolutely delighted has joined us for our second High Growth Leadership podcast. And we're very privileged to have Rachel here today, and particularly because you actually have arrived after a very busy couple of weeks where you've been in Paris at the Olympics and meeting the King. So we're very honoured to be the third wheel in that very important couple of weeks.
You forget the Prime Minister as well.
Oh, yeah, Prime Minister as well, absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us today, and great to be here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Really appreciate it.
Very exciting.
As you know, this is a podcast about high growth leadership. And to any of our listeners who aren't familiar with SnapDragon, you founded the business, and it is an anti-counterfeit technology platform. So absolutely fascinated to hear about that business, what it does, how you've led it to where it is today, and then to delve a little bit more into you and your leadership style and how that's evolved over the years and what makes you tick.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Wonderful. So you can do a much better job than Simon or I of describing what SnapDragon is and what it does. Would you like to kick us off there?
Absolutely. So SnapDragon fights fakes online. So we are identifying and removing fake products, sellers, and now websites as well. So we're all about keeping businesses safe from online threats.
Okay. And to people who maybe they're in the outset of their business career, or they don't have a product business, perhaps they're maybe not aware of the extent of the threat of counterfeiting products. Can you give us a little flavour for how big a concern that is for business owners and your clients?
Absolutely. It's a really great question. So counterfeiting around the world is the second biggest source of criminal income after drugs globally, and it contributes $500 billion a year to the global economy. So that's quite frightening. And even from a UK perspective, people lose jobs every year due to counterfeits and fake websites and all the rest of it. So it's a massive issue. The other big problem with counterfeit products is that in the main, the people who are behind counterfeiting are also involved in serious organised crime.
Okay.
So buying a counterfeit product is not just about buying a cheaper version of the brand where the product costs rather more. It's actually the money is going in all the wrong directions to fund stuff that actually you really don't want to be funding. So there are real reasons to not buy counterfeits, along with keeping yourself safe, because actually fake beauty products, fake airbags, they can have disastrous effects, but also you as a brand don't want to have a parallel brand running along that is funding prostitution, drugs rings, people trafficking and terrorism.
Absolutely, and it is interesting that, isn't it? Because that's really powerful here when you describe it like that. And I think it is a crime that maybe a lot of consumers, a lot of members of the public don't take that seriously. It seems that it isn't a victimless crime, evidently, from what you've just described. But I think to a lot of Joe public, it feels like that at times, and people don't think when they're buying a rip-off version of a product that they're doing anything that harmful.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I had absolutely no idea until I got into this. I mean, I honestly didn't know, and have in the past bought a counterfeit bag. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. But I didn't know. I mean, I honestly didn't know. And people we don't teach enough about it. We should really be teaching kids in schools that, because young kids now have, prepaid cards and somebody as young as 8 might be, online looking for a Hollister sweatshirt and there's a cheaper one and they don't know that cheaper one has actually possibly been made in appalling conditions by somebody their own age, and the dyes that made it have gone into the river and all the rest of it. So we really need to raise awareness about the dangers that counterfeits cause people who buy the product, but also the conditions they're made in, and then what they're funding. Definitely not understood well enough at all. But the Intellectual Property Office is working really hard at trying to raise awareness about fakes, and there will be more of that as the year goes on.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we're delighted to do our bit when this podcast goes out to our millions and millions of viewers.
But it's really important, and I'm completely passionate about raising awareness about fakes. Which I do a lot. I do a lot of talking about it because I'm so passionate about it. So yeah.
Okay, great. And what is it exactly that SnapDragon do? Then how do you stop fakes?
So what we do is we are paid by brands and organisations to monitor the web, basically, to look for copies and counterfeits and infringements of intellectual property. So intellectual property is something that you create. A trademark is intellectual property. The design of something is intellectual property product. That's your IP, and patents, which people will know also. So what we are doing is we are scraping platforms. We started off literally when I was bootstrapping the business at the beginning. It was really about scraping platforms like Amazon and eBay and Alibaba, which were the kind of main ones. But there are now thousands of online platforms selling product all around the world. So the brands and the organizations pay us to look for copycat product, and our technology goes out and scrapes the platforms, and then it brings back the results into our dashboard. And then AI and machine learning are applied so that we can we take the original images that we own and the information that we have about the client's product, and we apply that to what the dashboard has brought back, and we match the confidence score. And then we decide, well, these are infringing products and these are not infringing products. And then we generally have an allow list of sellers who are allowed to sell the product. And then we have a disallow list of links that we want to take down. And then sometimes the client interacts with the dashboard and says, take them all down. Or sometimes they leave us to take the links down because they know that we know where they should be selling genuine product. And then we use the client's intellectual property to prove originality. And that's the really exciting bit, because I got into this because my own product was counterfeited, which we can talk about at another point. But in the old days, you used to have to use lawyers and long, complicated legal processes to take things offline. But you can prove originality using IP. And that's really exciting because basically I can say to Amazon, or you could say to Amazon, this product is fake, and the original product owns the trademark, and here's the trademark certificate. But the really fascinating thing about IP, or another fascinating thing about it, because of course I think all IP is fascinating, is that IP is territorial. So if this product is on Amazon UK, Amazon.co.uk, for example, and this fake, I need to take it off using a trademark that is applicable to the UK. I can't use one that's a European one or a New Zealand or anything else. So I then upload the trademark to Amazon saying, my client has the original IP to this, it's their brand, here's the trademark, or it might be their design, here's the design right, and then Amazon will remove the link. And we are doing this, every day for hundreds of brands and taking down tens of thousands of links a month. And that is really, really important, because the faster you can take down the links, the less likely it is that people will buy. And what we're really trying to do is to keep the web clear of fakes of these brands, making it as easy as possible for the consumer to find the genuine product.
And as in an evolving global landscape and the proliferation of online platforms, how important is it that you get the buy-in of the people who run those platforms to execute the work that you want to do?
It's incredibly important, and a great question. So when I started out, I was very lucky, and that the Alibaba group included basically what was kind of me and Jet, who's our guru of brand protection, in meetings where major brands were sitting around the table, and there, people in those basically 10 years ago, in the main, fakes were about luxury and major brands, household brands. But we were there saying, SMEs get counterfeited too. So having a good relationship with the platforms is really important. The other thing that's really important is being able to talk their language, literally. So we have a really international team of whom I'm incredibly proud, but that's very important. Because we might have started off with major platforms being an issue in China, but they're not just in China now, and so you need to have Korean and Portuguese and Japanese and Arabic and all the rest of it. So it's really important that we can do that, and the platforms really appreciate the fact we're making that effort. So building the relationships with the platforms is really important.
And you touched on it briefly, and it's really fascinating because we're aware of it already. But do you mind going into your origin story, because it is a very, very interesting one?
Oh dear goodness. So just over 20 years ago, I invented a baby product called the Totseat, the washable, squashable high chair for babies who lunch, to give it its Sunday title. And it basically is a fabric product which anchors a baby in any chair when you're out and about, small enough to go in your pocket, machine washable. And I created it just because life going around with a wiggly baby was a bit tricky when every time I went to a nice cafe, they hauled a grubby high chair out of the downstairs loo and I didn't want to use it. So I used to tie my daughter into a chair using a jumper, and then one incredibly frustrating and cold afternoon, after a very wriggly experience, I chopped up my wedding dress and made the first Totseat with my husband handing me the scissors. We're still married. And I didn't need the wedding dress again, so that was okay. So I just kind of created this product and off we went. And actually, it did really well over the first kind of 5 years or so, and we were into 50 countries and exporting really a lot, and selling through the likes of John Lewis and Boots and their equivalents in these countries around the world. So it was an extraordinary exercise, actually. I mean, I'd never made anything in my life, but I knew how to build a brand, and that was basically what we did. So it was very successful and having great time. But I was learning about intellectual property as we went along, and I couldn't get a patent. I spent a lot of money trying to get a patent, which I didn't get. But I had decent trademarks in all the territories I wanted to trade in, and design rights. And I had done something which was register the product at customs. So all customs agencies, if anybody who's listening has a product which they're exporting, this might be useful to know, but all border agencies around the world have registers of product that you can register your product and tell them about counterfeits or something that might be an infringement. And so I had done that with the Totseat. And the day that I had registered the Totseat with HMRC Border Customs here, the GHD hair straightener had also been registered, as had the Sony Walkman. So it just goes to show quite how long ago it was. And the Financial Times was so amused, they ran a big piece on it. Anyway, Customs were very eagle-eyed, and they spotted some fake Totseats coming into the country. And they only spotted them because we brought Totseats in LCL, which is part container, 3,000 units, and a box of 36 came in. And that was the only thing I had on my form. I thought it would be copied, and it was copied by high street chains, and we had to fight all of that before the counterfeits. But I actually hadn't thought about a complete counterfeit, and if I had it here, I could show you how.
I've seen the images, and it is worth noting that it is the brand name, it is the packaging, it is to the naked eye identical.
Yes, I mean, I put them on the table in the boardroom, and nobody else could tell the difference. So I was just appalled. So they rang me up and said, "We think you've got a fake Totseat," and your blood ran cold. And anyway, DHL sent it up, and we got it the next day, and it was awful, absolutely awful. I mean, I still remember knowing, just holding it in my hand and thinking, it is actually a counterfeit. It is actually a proper counterfeit. Anyway. Furious, absolutely furious. Hell hath no fury, as a woman who's been counterfeited. And that was the beginning of the fight. And I found 2 Chinese students at Edinburgh University Business School to help me identify the links online. Literally the same day, went to the business school, who I knew anyway because I was doing some mentoring there. So there's 2 Chinese came and helped, which was marvellous. And then a couple of weeks later, I met this marvellous woman, Jet, who I've mentioned already, in a cafe. She just graduated from St Andrews and had a great interest in the link between terrorism and counterfeiting, oddly. And so I said, well, why don't you come and let's go to China and let's challenge Alibaba. So off we went. I mean, literally, this is what happened. And so we went to China, and we sat in the Alibaba waiting room like a bad film, really, until they saw us. And
was it easy enough to get a meeting, particularly when it was going to be a reasonably hostile one?
To be fair, I don't remember them getting the meeting being terribly difficult, because I'm not sure they actually thought we would turn up. I mean, I don't think it was all that kind of normal for a couple of women to pitch up from Edinburgh at their offices. But we did. And the Scottish Development International was kind enough to give us a translator, so that was super helpful. So the 3 of us were there for hours. Anyway, the meeting, they were incredibly helpful. once they understood that actually I was trying to run a small business that employed 5 people and my product had been counterfeited, and there I was with the genuine product and the counterfeit. I think up until that point, they really just thought it was all about luxury, which it really was. I mean, we're talking 20 years ago now. And, well, not quite 20 years ago, 15, I suppose. And that at that point, they agreed, they taught us so much. I mean, they were incredibly generous with what we learned on that day. Because I was basically, just kind of middle-aged woman with a baby product. I didn't have a clue. I mean, I just didn't have a clue that.
But at that point, they as a retailer or reseller weren't aware of the scale of the problem and the type of product category that you were operating in?
Definitely not. No, definitely not. So they then were able to say to me, well, actually, you can use your UK registered IP on this platform to get rid of the fakes. And these are the things that you can do.
And that's very important, isn't it? Because there's probably a lot of people, myself included, who wouldn't have thought that the UK rights would travel and that you would be able to apply that.
That's right. And so UK or rights from anywhere else can be applied on the Alibaba platform, but not on many others. It just happens to be that because Alibaba is so international that they do accept rights from elsewhere. So because it's an outward-facing platform, that's okay. But some of the Alibaba group's inward-facing platforms require Chinese registered IP. Anyway, they were great. The Alibaba team were absolutely excellent, very helpful. We even were on a tandem cycling around the Alibaba campus, which is a bit like cycling around Google. Not to have ever done that, but it feels like it might have been like that. And we came back. I basically came back, and Jet joined me, and we had to kind of Totseat still trying to kind of keep going in the background or in the office. And we started manually looking for these links and taking them offline using IP. And then I said to some other friends in the baby industry and the toy industry, look, you've got fakes as well, why aren't you doing anything about it? And I then discovered that actually nobody really wanted to talk about counterfeits. It was kind of brushed under the carpet. And I thought, well, actually, this is nonsense, particularly in baby and child, because it could do some damage. I mean, I was worried with a fake Totseat that it might be really badly made and a baby might fall out, and I would be sued, and but I was worried. It was really a health and safety issue for me. But of course, for other people, it's much more than a health and safety issue.
Why do you think it was that people didn't really want to talk about counterfeiting as either a tie to their business or just a problem more generally?
I think, looking back at when this was, the internet wasn't where it is now. So even when I went and found that there was there were a couple of businesses around that were kind of legal and did brand protection, and I asked for a quote for helping with the Totseat stuff, and they said it'll be £100,000 because we work for Gucci and Hermes and people like that. And I'm like, well, I haven't really got that kind of cash. So I suspect that one of the things was that people thought it was incredibly expensive to deal with it, and you need lawyers and
be a long process,
and complex process. Which, to be honest, it was. It really was. But discovering that you could use intellectual property to take the links down was just mind-blowingly brilliant, because it was just like, right, well, let's just get on and do it. And so some of the people who actually, 8 years or 10 years ago, how long ago it was, I went to and said, look, you've got fakes, can we help? They're still with us today. They were our very first clients, and we have helped them go into new markets by making sure that they've had the right IP before they've gone into the market, and anything that has been even infringing in the slightest has just been taken down really quickly. And it matters because, sales on Amazon, people can sell hundreds of thousands of products in a day. And if you can get a link down in 5 minutes, then you've saved the brand a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. And that's an exceptional story. And, you started a business off the back of your anger that this had happened to you. Is that the trigger for most of your clients coming to use SnapDragon, that they've had an incident, or increasingly people getting ahead of that?
I think there's a bit of both. I think in the early days, our clients came to us through word of mouth and mostly for health and safety reasons, because you just can't, fake airbags, it's just not the way. Put fake ball bearings, beauty products. It's just terrifying. I think as time has gone on, counterfeiting's become more understood. Even the football clubs are trying to discourage people from buying fake shirts now, thankfully. And having a parallel brand running along isn't what brands want either. So I think health and safety will always drive the first person to do something about tackling fakes. Since COVID, we've seen a huge rise in working for organisations and businesses that don't have physical product. So actually, we're taking down fake websites all the time. So we started off really looking for physical product and taking down fake products or infringing product and the sellers of those products. And now domains have become huge. Lots of fake domains for law firms, recruitment firms, businesses where, the website looks exactly the same or very near enough. And then there's an invoice going out that's attached to it and the invoices get paid and all the rest of it. So domain monitoring has become a huge part of the business, which it wasn't previously.
And you mentioned at the outset about how SnapDragon works. You mentioned scraping the internet. You mentioned AI, machine learning. All advanced technologies. You were in a consumer product business up to that point. So when you decided that, right, okay, I'm going to set SnapDragon up to tackle this issue, how did you approach going into the tech world, and how did you feel about that as somebody who wasn't from a technology background?
No, I'm not in the slightest bit technical. So, it's really ridiculous. I don't know why I thought I could possibly found a technology company. But it was clearly going to be a technology-based company. So I met a marvellous man called Barnaby, who I met him at MIT, actually. So I was lucky enough to do an entrepreneurship program at MIT, and he was there as well. And he was based in Shetland and looking for some things to do. And so he kind of joined Jet and I to help with the early tech around scraping of what we were doing. And then as the business looked like it was actually going to be turned from bootstrapping exercise into a business, I went off and raised some money and then started building a team around that. But I am not technical in the slightest, not in the slightest. But in some ways, I think that's good that I'm not technical, because I think if I had been, I'd have been attempting to code and improve things just all the time and not done all the other bits. So anyway, there we are. We are what we are. I've brought in a fabulous team, and they can do all the technical stuff and then tell me when it's done.
And what would your message be then to all the would-be entrepreneurs out there who've had a great idea but are intimidated by the prospect of building the technology to deliver upon it?
Recruit the best you can is absolutely the thing, I would say. The best you can afford. But also look at innovative ways of bringing in the expertise. So I did a lot of students, women returners, part-time, in order to just kind of stretch budgets, and particularly women who had been out of the workforce for a few years and were wanting to come back but had fabulous experience, and so were cheaper, and I could afford them part-time. So I did a lot of that. And I think then, we also have somebody who has done incredibly well in the business, but I met him when he was a delivery driver. Okay. And I just saw his potential and thought, yeah, actually, you'll do. Why don't you come and join us? And he invented a product. So, the whole thing about identifying the best you can, affording the best you can, bringing people in, from the point of view of bringing people up through the business, and more junior people we recruit for attitude and grit, believing that skills can be taught. Yeah. And from a more senior point of view, try to bring people through the business as far as possible. So one of the great joys has been bringing people across the business from one department to another and seeing them rise through the ranks and build their own teams. And that's just something I'm really proud of them,
And just thinking about building the team, and given it's, as you say, it's a global ecosystem in which you operate, it's sort of big problems that you're looking to try and help your customers with. How much has the purpose of the business resonated with the people who've joined and stayed?
Huge, because actually people think and know that they're making a real difference, because every month we're saying, or every week or every day we're saying to clients, we've removed 10,000 or 20,000 links today in product that's worth X million or whatever it is. So the fact that we are actually trying to change the world a small bit every day makes a big difference. So yeah, it is a purpose. So it is a purpose-driven business.
Yeah, and a really powerful purpose to get behind. You mentioned there that you were committed to doing this, that you went out and raised money, and I think you've raised close to £4 million to date.
Correct.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that process and how you found that as a leader?
Yes, I certainly wouldn't describe myself as a leader when I was setting off to do the fundraising, because when I started the looking for fundraising, there was only Jet and myself in the business and Barnaby and Shetland. So, I mean, I was very lucky in the early stages. Actually, I didn't know, thankfully, how difficult it was to raise money. And we've all seen all of the stats about how difficult it is to raise money at the moment. And actually, women raising money becomes even more difficult, which is just silly, but it's true. So I got a very early investment from Mercia, who have been great for us, actually, really, really great, still with us several years later. But we've done it in tranches. So the very first investment we got was £400,000, and we had to deliver a few things before we would get the next bit. So I think we had a 3-month plan, and I was really naive. I mean, I was so green about what needed to be done, but they were quite helpful. And we brought in some other people just to kind of advise us on, what should it look like when we're saying, well, the first tranche is 400,000, the next tranche might be 600,000. What should we be able to achieve and be achieving with that first 400,000? But we hit all the milestones, and so the next tranche would come, and then we would set off on another tranche, and then we'd achieve those milestones and things. So that was very much how we kind of got the first bits of money in, with Mercia by our side and leading the round. So that was really excellent.
Okay, let's go at the point that you decided that you wanted to raise money for the business. How much awareness did you have of the different funding options that were available to you as a very early stage founder, and how did you sort of navigate through the potential sources of capital?
Good question. I had raised money for Totseat, so actually I had been through a fundraise before. Poor timing, 2008, October. But so I knew a bit. I certainly knew a bit about kind of angels and high net worths and that kind of side of things. I didn't really know very much about PE houses and VC and the rest of it, but you learn fairly quickly. And I just set about learning it, to be perfectly honest. And it was quite clear that I couldn't bootstrap the business. I mean, I bootstrapped it for 2 years and was running Totseat at the same time, and that was pretty tough going. And it was quite clear that I couldn't do anything. Build technology is really expensive to build. I mean, it's really expensive to build. I had no idea. And also we're building on shifting sands because there are so many, as you rightly pointed out, the internet has exploded, and a new market comes out on a Monday and there's got 1 million users, and you think, oh, okay, do we need to pay attention? And then by Friday it's got 9 million users, and you do need to pay attention. You need to start scraping it. So and this sorts of things happen all the time. And if somebody moves one of the pixels or a widget 2 to the left, then we have to start scraping 2 to the left millions and millions of times a day. So it is a very complicated business, and that's why I needed to raise the money to do it.
So when once you decided to go down the route of raising VC money, we work with a lot of VC businesses and early stage businesses, and there's obviously this perennial trade-off between the amount of funding you raise, thus giving you the length of cash runway you give yourself, and then the amount of equity that you might have to part with to do so. And there's a temptation to raise a smaller amount and wait until the business has greater value, so you give away less equity, but then you want to give yourself ample runway to deliver on whichever milestones you're pursuing. So if we've seen lots of businesses go through that, some get it right, some get it wrong, and you can, if you're not careful, end up in a perennial cash raising mode. That if you're going too small. What was your learnings, having been through multiple tranches and having, I suppose, looked at that calculation of how much cash runway should I give myself before I go again?
How long have we got? God, the learnings around raising money. The first thing I would say is that I tried for a long time to find a co-founder, and I kissed a lot of frogs. And that meant I was a bit late probably looking for funding in the first instance, and eventually just kind of went for it on my own. But I think it would have been easier if I'd had a co-founder that was, able to put the hours in that I was putting in. I mean, I wasn't expecting any of the 2 people that were involved to be in that position because they both had to be paid for what they were doing. So, there was no lack of expectation or anything there. They were both absolutely amazing. But yeah, you have to do what you can with what you've got, is what it boils down to. So I had no money, very little income, no technical skills, had to raise money. And I thought it would be a better idea to have a small part a small part of a bigger pie than all of the small pie. So the equity thing didn't really faze me. I wasn't really driven by the kind of money. I was more driven by the fact we needed to get the money into the business so that we could get the people in, so we could do the things that we needed to do. So, I mean, lots of people said to me as we went for our third round, I think, oh gosh, you don't own very much of the business anymore. And I said, well, I know I don't own very much of the business anymore, but you can't get to the kind of turnover that we're at. I wouldn't have got it to the turnover we're at if I had. So I needed the money to do that because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do these things myself. So there's no point crying over spilt milk. I had to do what I had to do to get it anywhere. And because I didn't have the skill set or lots of money that I could put into it myself, I was, I suppose, in a bit of a kind of survival mode, and then doing what I could with what I had and trying to make every penny stretch. I mean, I know the first board we had was cross with me because they used to say I didn't spend enough. I didn't spend fast enough, but I was so anxious about making every penny sort of stretch. And you need to spend that money. It's here to be spent, spend it. So anyway, I don't have any problem spending it nowadays, of course.
We had a client once describe the scenario to us, and they were an experienced business person who then went into an early stage venture business. And they said, when it's going well and you're being encouraged by the investor to spend quicker, it feels like you're accelerating towards a brick wall because you can see the cash running out, but everybody's happy with how it's going. They're saying, go faster, go faster. Does that chime with your experience?
Yes, I think you can be too reactive to that kind of pressure. I mean, cash runway is always what's uppermost in your mind, or it was always what was uppermost in my mind when I was in the CEO role, and now I'm not in the CEO role. That's the one thing I don't miss. And it's really nice not waking. I'm not saying I don't think about it. Of course, I think about it as an NED, but I don't lie awake and I'm not sitting at 2 a.m. doing spreadsheets, which is great, really great, because I'm not financial either. I mean, I can work a spreadsheet, but so I found the fundraising. I think the thing about fundraising is that it really mattered to me that whoever invested in us, we got on with as people, because I wanted to be able to learn from the people who invested in us, particularly when we brought in some high net worths who have been really incredibly helpful. And whoever the VCs were, or singular now still is Mercia, you want to be able to work with these people to achieve the same goal. So I said to myself, if I'm sitting up at 2 a.m. doing spreadsheets for a particular person and it's making me cross, then they're not the people I want to work with. If I don't mind, I'm just going to be tired the next day, then that's fine. So that was kind of what I went for. And I mean, we turned down investment from a couple of people who just, the 2 o'clock exercise didn't work. And it didn't pass that test. And I think people buy from people. It doesn't matter whether I'm selling my service to you or you're selling your service to me. We're doing it because we like each other. And it mattered to me that what we were trying to achieve, we were going to achieve together, rather than, I knew that we would have disagreements, and you do have disagreements about what you're spending on or what you're not spending on or whatever else. So we needed to have as few as possible.
Yeah. But it was a partner you were looking for, not just some money.
Yeah, somebody once said to me that finding an investor is like a marriage. You have to find somebody that you can really get on with, not just rub along with. So yeah, I thought it's fine. So.
And you touched fleetingly before about going to raise money as a female founder is more challenging, and I think that's, putting it mildly. I think that the stats are quite shocking.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, is that something you're very conscious of going into that process?
It feels like so long ago. I think I knew it was more difficult for women to raise money. I don't think I realised that only 2% of all VC and PE money goes to women-led businesses when I started, 2%. So that's not great. And I'm easily deterred by that kind of thing. So I think if I had known, I might have just thought, oh no, bollocks to that, I'm just going for it anyway, which is probably what I did think, and I had to go for it. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing about those statistics is that it is possible. I mean, I am living proof that, you can be middle-aged and you can be a woman and you can raise money, for God's sake. So it is possible if you have, a minimum viable product, and you've got sales, and you know what you're doing, and you've got a good team and a clear market and a need and demand is there and a way to make a profit, then you can do it. So, yeah, statistics are rubbish, but, the only way to change them is to get on and do it.
Yeah, because essentially so this month we've got GCSE results, we've got A-level results, we've got this year's crop of budding female entrepreneurs who might be thinking about what they do with themselves, how they start businesses, create jobs. What gives you optimism that it might be a better landscape for the people who are coming through now than it might have been in the past?
Oh, well, I wrote about this just yesterday on LinkedIn.
Timely.
Yeah, well, the results came out in Scotland yesterday, so absolutely true. Well, when I was at school, entrepreneurialism would never have been suggested. But, the world is so much easier to get at now. I mean, I think that's the key thing. And I think we are much better at encouraging young people to do something that they're really interested in now. And people do start businesses when they're at school. They sell their artwork, and they resell whatever else there might be reselling. Maybe we won't go into the detail on that one, but people do have entrepreneurial spirit, and there are lots more people around to encourage them than there were had I said to myself at that leaving school, oh, I'm going to start a business. I did actually start a business when I left university. I was a self-employed photographer and tried to do that. I was not a success at it. I mean, I was all right at taking the photographs actually, but I didn't really want to do weddings, and actually it was very difficult to actually find advice as to how even to set up and run a business. But that kind of advice is out there now, and I think in the main, if anybody ever asks me for advice, if anybody wants my advice about running or setting up a business, I'm always really happy to provide it. So, and most people are. So I think anybody who is leaving school and thinking, well, I'm not academic, so I don't want to necessarily go on to some tertiary education, but I'm really interested in whatever it is. I want to run a business. Just do it. I mean, absolutely get on and do it. Reach out to people who know something about it or who have skills that would be useful to you, and let's get you going. I mean, let's absolutely do it. There's a brilliant book which I was given many years ago by my husband, which is called Anyone Can Do It, and it's by Saha Hashimi and her brother, who founded Coffee Republic. And honestly, it's brilliant. It's just a wee paperback tenner. Really recommend it if you're looking for inspiration, how to set up a business and just get cracking. Good. It's a really good, easy read.
Thank you. Reasons for optimism. You mentioned that you're not CEO anymore, that you're NED now. Can you talk to us about that transition?
I can. Yes, thank you. So I always knew, and I have always said, even in investment pitches, I always knew there would be a point when I wouldn't be the right person to take the business forward. I mean, I've never scaled a business. So, there will become a stage when I'm like, well, I don't know what to do next. I know where the business needs to go, but I'm not probably the right person to do that. So I always knew there'd be a point to do that. And then last year I was unfortunately diagnosed with breast cancer, and having been off and quite unwell, when I came back, I just thought, actually, I probably can't work the hours that I used to work and that I love working, so we need to bring in somebody else. So we have brought in a new CEO, and that's wonderful. And I have gone into a different role, which is that of a non-executive director. So I wear an ambassadorial hat instead, and Marcus, who's our new CEO, is doing a grand job.
Fantastic. Well, working in recruitment and recruiting for VC and PE-backed businesses, I have lots of questions about that. So firstly, really fascinated to hear that you even used to say that in pitches for funding that you didn't think you would be right longer term to scale the business, because we unfortunately get asked on a fairly regular basis to help with a succession plan where the founder maybe hasn't come to that conclusion on their own, and the PE house or VC fund are nudging them towards it. And I think something that we've observed is that often that might actually be how the founder feels, but they feel a pressure to act like they want to lead the business forever. And then the investor goes along with that because they think that's what the founder wants to hear, and they don't necessarily have the grown-up conversation about when might be the right time to step away until there were some issues there. So how did you find it was received when you were going into funding pitches saying, there will be a point at which I would like to step away, or I think it would be right for me to step away?
I think several people said they were surprised to hear me say that. And I just said, well, my ego is not important here. What matters is that the business does what it needs to do and gives us everybody the return that they need. So I was just being honest, really.
And then the other question on that is, we meet a lot of non-executives in their first non-executive role who find it very difficult to resist the urge to step back in. And I can imagine that temptation is tenfold when it's a business that you founded. So how do you police your behaviours? Do you police your behaviours to prevent that from happening?
It's been quite difficult, I have to say. I think I'm getting better at it, but the first few months were quite challenging. But yeah, I'm getting better at not interfering.
So as David says, we work with families or founders where they recruit an external general manager, MD, CEO for the first time. And one of the key themes, irrespective of skills and experience, seems to be one of trust. When you were going through the process to bring your CEO in, how did you get to a point of thinking this is an individual that we can trust, either with the right values around leadership, the right alignment to purpose, the right dynamic with me transitioning into a non-exec role?
Dynamic with your team.
Yeah.
Really important. We spent a long time looking for somebody to come in and be the CEO. And we were really looking for somebody we thought who had kind of founded and started, scaled and exited. But actually, by the time you've done all of that, you're so exhausted, you never want to do it again. So actually, it was very difficult to find anybody who... So in fact, our new CEO hasn't been a founder. But when I met him, I just thought, he's got great experience, but his kind of morals were aligned with mine. I know it sounds a bit random, really, and I thought, well, actually, you're a decent bloke. You've got great experience, and you know what is required. So, and at the end of the day, I have to trust him to do what needs to happen with, business of which I'm a shareholder. And that's what I've done. I'm not saying it's been easy, but I did feel that when I was introducing him to the team, I wasn't actually there the day that he started. I just sent a wee video saying, look, Marcus has got my backing. I really think he's the right person for this role. And, we saw a few folks, and none of us had felt that they were appropriate. So.
And in role, how has he gone about establishing the trust and confidence required as a new CEO to engage all the different stakeholders around the business, yourself, the leadership team, all the employees?
Yeah, he's very committed to what he's doing, and he really believes in what SnapDragon does, which is really great. So he's just kind of got out and about and got stuck in, really, which is what really needed to happen.
Great.
Stepping back to NED has, of course, opened the opportunity for you to pursue other non-executive roles, of which you have several. So is that a lifestyle, a plural lifestyle that you're enjoying?
Oh, it's fun. Yes, it's great. I wasn't expecting it at all. But I love doing the other things. I mean, I'm absolutely still completely passionate about SnapDragon, don't get me wrong, and the team in particular. And the thing which I knew I would miss and then did miss the most was actually mentoring and coaching the people. That was the thing. So I thought, well, I need to find something else where I can take those skills into something else so that I'm not interfering over here where I'm not meant to interfere anymore. So I went off to volunteer for SmartWorks, which is a fantastic organisation which empowers women back into the world of work through coaching and clothes. And so I'm a volunteer coach there. So that's great. So I get my kind of coaching thing there. Yeah. That's really important. And I also sit on the board of a community shop in the Borders, which I love as well. So those kind of things are great. And it's good to have the time to do that, because I've wanted to work for or to volunteer at SmartWorks for years and to get involved in the community shop. And I just haven't had time, because you always have to prioritize. And rightly so, prioritizing, number one, SnapDragon, always. So it's been really nice to be able to say, yes, I can do that. And yes, I'd love to come and yes, as opposed to no, I'm very sorry, perpetually.
And you touched on having the time there, and I've had the privilege of hearing you speak before. And one of the messages that I remember you delivering very eloquently was that your health challenges, there was an element of stress as a causation of that. And I think at the time that I heard you speak, you were speaking alongside several other founders talking about who they were talking about the huge amount of hours that are required to be successful in a founder-led business. And you were, providing a very sensible break or check on that thought process and saying, work-life balance is important for everybody, including founders. Is that something that you thought that you continue to have?
Well, yes, I mean, this is wonderful. We all talk about work-life balance and then we never have it, do we? I mean, it's just nonsense. And I worked very hard at SnapDragon, making sure as many of my team as possible had a really good work-life balance. But of course, didn't have that myself at all. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, thankfully it's not a hereditary type, but I was told it was probably related to stress. And I thought, right, well, COVID definitely didn't help in that department, as many as around, all of that happened to so many people. But it was that I thought, right, I cannot go back to working these hours. It's just not fair on my family or me, for goodness sake. Life's for living. Yeah. I mean, I love SnapDragon. I absolutely love what we do. And I'm so proud of, the fact that we remove all of these links every day and these sellers and brands continue to thrive in the face of adversity. But I can't do those hours anymore.
Indeed. And then this podcast is about high growth leadership. You've successfully scaled a business. You also you founded your third time founder, including your photography business. So in terms of your leadership style, how would you reflect that has changed over time? Has it changed over time with the people who worked with you at Totseat some 20 odd years ago? Reflect similarly about your style to the people at SnapDragon?
I haven't ever asked them actually, but as some of them came with me from Totseat to SnapDragon, possibly they would. I hope that it hasn't changed that much. I hope I'm better at taking advice than I might have been. I know that I'm better at asking for it probably now. I certainly really, there's a few folk who are in the business on the board or not on the board, but who I really revere their kind of thoughts and opinions and seek that out now. I definitely didn't ask for help enough in the early stages. And before Totseat, I had co-founded a consultancy with my husband, which we grew and sold. So yeah, I don't have any amount now. Well, yeah, anyway, co-founder on that one. I think I definitely didn't ask for help enough. I mean, I think asking for help has become much easier for everybody now, which I think is a really good thing. I think I was just too embarrassed to ask for help in the early days. So I'm better at doing that. I have always prioritized being kind, which might sound a bit random, but it really matters to me. Trust and being kind, listening, learning, really important, challenging, but with positivity. Certainly taking things I learned from being an employee, turning some of that around, challenging on positivity, and giving people a second chance. I mean, we're talking about our employee who's marvelous, who was, on this delivery driver. And I literally thought when I met him, well, it's February, and if I was your parents, I would be a bit anxious about you driving, being a delivery cyclist. So we'll just take you out of that and just come and try working with us. And that was literally my thought process. I mean, at the time, which is the wrong way to recruit people, but my God, it was a great hire. So yeah, I think I've always recruited for attitude and grit. So as I said earlier on about the skills. I think I'm still me. I hope.
Good. And you mentioned listening and learning, and still important to you. What would you describe, or who would you describe as big influences on your career, and what you've taken from that?
Well, I think James Timpson's marvellous, and I had the great pleasure of bumping into him at the King's Awards.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, I had a lovely chat with him. That was very exciting, I have to say.
He's got a very interesting new job, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. It was the day after that had been announced, actually. So it was fabulous meeting him, because I think that I think he's amazing what Timpsons have done.
Must be the most universally popular ministerial appointment of all time, that mustn't
He's
it?
also just such a nice bloke. I mean, it was I was a bit starstruck actually. It was also a bit embarrassing, but anyway, it was great. It was really great to meet him. I think he's fantastic. I think in terms of how, I can't remember what the question was now. So I've gone off down the James Stimson route. Sorry, what was the question?
Inspirations in your career, where you get your learning from.
I've been on a few programs and I've learned a lot at things like trade shows, which I know sounds a bit random, but in the early days with Totseat, we would go off to a trade show with the product, to sell to wholesalers and distributors around the world. And you would learn so much from the people who were exhibiting beside you, as well as from the people who were possibly coming to buy. So I think learning from your peers is so underrated, but absolutely brilliant. And I've been lucky enough to do the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program and the Scale Up program. And they've both been brilliant, absolutely superb. I couldn't recommend them highly enough. Some trade missions have also been really helpful. The MIT program where I met Barnaby, who was our tech expert, early tech expert. There's the book Disciplined Entrepreneurship that Bill Audit wrote. And that was a real guide for me with SnapDragon. In fact, when I was setting the business up, because I'd never set up a technology business and didn't really know what I was doing, I was literally going through, well, this week we're going to do chapter 1 and next week we're going to do chapter 2. It was literally like that. So I did that. And some of the people that I've just had as board advisors and formal advisors have been really helpful.
Fantastic.
And just thinking ahead, so the business has recently been recognised with the King's Award. What do the next years hold for SnapDragon? What are you looking forward to experiencing with the business from this point forward?
Growth, growth, growth.
Simple.
Yeah, all about growth. So 70% of our current income is from businesses and organisations out with the UK. So we love the fact that we are working on an international basis, which is incredibly important because counterfeiting is clearly an international problem. More of that, really. We're really, really focused on growth. I mean, counterfeiting and online threats, as there are more online threats, we need to be, we need to be able to tackle more online threats. As I was talking about, domains, that's something we now need to do as well. And we've started doing, impersonation, because lots of people are having issues with impersonation, of course. So
it's a new emerging and scary field.
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So we now have to offer this as well. So we need to keep 2 steps ahead of the counterfeiters, and we need to keep 3 steps ahead of, what trends are, and we need to be able to be brilliant at it and deliver brilliant service with a great team who are happy and recognised and rewarded for what they do.
And then I think we're on to our killer question, which I think Lewis is going to sort out a theme tune at that point. Do you want to ask it?
I can't remember which one we're going to ask, so you better do it.
So if there's one thing you could tell your earlier self at the start of your career, which would have helped you get where you are quicker, what would that be? We should maybe give some pre-warning of these, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think that would have been helpful. I mean, I still think the co-founder thing stands, to be honest. I think that would have been really helpful.
Because going back to some of the things we talked about with the investor landscape, I think there's some positive stats around how more positively inclined early stage investors are to support co-founded businesses or teams of founders rather than sole founders.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking of. I mean, what was I thinking of? I just thought I need to get on and do it. So I went. So I didn't. Got on with it. I think having a co-founder would have made life easier.
Yeah. Interesting. And you said you did try quite hard to make that happen.
I did try quite hard, but I didn't really know where to look. I mean, I did look a lot, and as I said, I kissed a lot of frogs, but I wasn't really sure what I was looking for, because brand protection is a specialist field, and it's really just emerging. I mean, when I left school, nobody had heard of brand protection.
And rapidly evolving as well.
Still rapidly evolving. So it wasn't even really a career 5 years ago, never mind, 8-10 years ago. So it was really just a bit too sort of technical. So
finding a co-founder to share the experience with would be a key thing you wish you could.
Yeah, because as we all know, it can be a very lonely road, and much of it has been a very lonely road. So having a phenomenal leadership team, I mean, the leadership team that we have at the moment, I mean, Marcus is new, our CEO, and we have a relatively new finance director who is on their own, so they didn't have a team they could go through. But the rest of the leadership team have all been with the business and grown through the business. And of that, I am so proud. So they've all been there for years and they're all marvelous. And so, you know, and they've been of course, they've been an absolutely great support. And they've just, they're taking it where it needs to go.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you the very best of luck with that and look forward to seeing the growth journey continue.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you
on.
very much.
Much appreciated. Thanks.